Today we've got a crazy revenge story that all goes down in a summer job. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, that mean coworker I got fired. My name is Mia. After high school, I decided that I did not want to go to college without first deciding what it was that I wanted to do with my life. So I decided to take time off from school to figure out my life. By the time I took off from school turned out to be one of the most eye-opening experiences of my entire life. But there was no way my parents would have allowed me to stay home while I was doing the whole figuring out my life thing without doing anything concrete from morning to night. This was what prompted me to get my first job, and the first job I got was at a busy store. It was a big moment for me, feeling all excited and hopeful. Made me feel like if I could make it out alive for the couple of months I said I wanted to work, and I was a step closer to getting my things together and knowing what exactly I wanted to do with myself. The store was always buzzing with people, and everyone who worked there felt like friends, even though we didn't really see much of each other outside of our individual or collective shifts. We laughed together, helped each other out, and shared stories during our breaks. It felt like we were a little team working towards the same goal, but they became the kind of persons you could be sure would have your back if the manager came looking for your neck. I remember walking into that store for the first time, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement bubbling inside me, but as soon as I met my coworkers and felt the warmth of their welcome, those nerves melted away. The energy in the air was infectious, and I knew right then and there that I was going to love working there. At least, till I moved on to other things. In a way, the whole place seemed to test my limits from the very first day as everything moved at a pace faster than I'd ever known. I had not been exposed to that kind of setting before, and although it was scary, I pressed on. But more than testing my limits, it made me see a side of me that I did not think existed. No, it wasn't anything ridiculously bad. It was just me learning to step out from the shell I kept myself all through high school and tell people off when they deserved to be told off. As summer rolled around, our store decided to bring in some new faces to help out with the extra customers. It was exciting to meet new people and welcome them to our team, but there was one person who stood out from the rest, and not in a good way. Not in the slightest. Her name was Lily, and she came in with a smile that seemed friendly enough. But as we got to know her, I realized there was more to her than meets the eye. She was charming, sure, but there was something about her that felt off. She had this way of swooping in and taking credit for sales that weren't hers, leaving the rest of us feeling frustrated and confused. Before you think that it was all in my head, it wasn't, and I wasn't the only one who noticed it. At first, we tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe she was just enthusiastic about her work and probably wanted to put in a good face so that she would be considered for promotion as soon as possible. But as time went on, it became clear that Lily wasn't playing fair. She would use sneaky tactics to steal customers away from us, leaving us with empty hands and even emptier pockets. It didn't take long for tensions to start brewing among the team. Some of us tried to confront Lily about her behavior, but she just brushed us off with a smile and a shrug. It was like she didn't care about anyone else but herself, and it made working with her unbearable at times. Imagine a scene where you're trying to talk to a customer and then she stays within earshot and immediately jumps into the conversation when she knows that the customer is at that vulnerable point. The annoying part of the whole issue is how we could not call her out in front of the customer. It would be counterintuitive of us to get at each other's throats in the presence of the customer, and it could turn the customer from doing business in the store. That would have led to an automatic dismissal of both parties. Before we knew it, Lily had become a divisive figure within our team, creating rifts and sowing seeds of distrust among us. Nothing was ever her fault, and her reasons for swooping in like an eagle stalking a hen was because it was what was good for the company. Right. At some point, a couple of the old-timers decided to have a heart-to-heart talk with her, making her see reason as to how her action was affecting them. So they went ahead and tried talking to her about it, telling her how it made the rest of the employees on shift with her feel, and asking her to stop. But she just brushed us off like it was no big deal. She would flash a smile and say something like, "It's just business," as if that made it okay to treat us like that. More importantly, it wasn't just the stealing that bothered us though. Speaking for myself, it wasn't just that action that bothered me. All through high school, I schooled with entitled people like her who felt like they had to trample on other people to get where they wanted. And I was just too sick of it. The familiarity made me sick to my bones. Lily had this way of making us feel like we were less than like we didn't matter. She would talk down to us and belittle our ideas, making us feel small and insignificant, especially when she saw one of the higher grade company workers in sight. In a way, she reminded me of the friend I had in middle school who dumped me for her circle of popular soccer girls. This friend not only ruined our plans of sticking together through high school, but also decided to find every means to belittle me in the first year when I tried following her about like a puppet. It was the same way I had followed the friend, not knowing what to do, was the same way we were queuing up behind Lily, allowing her to do as she pleased whenever it was her shift. Of course, Lily didn't change her ways even after they tried to plead with her. She was stubborn and selfish, caring more about her own success than the well-being of the team. The crazy part was that it was kind of an issue that would not see the light of day in HR. I mean, her actions were in no way disrupting the flow of business, neither were they making the company run at a loss. In retrospect, I believe her actions made the company more sales because she had a way with customers. She had a way with them that made it easier for her to poach them and stir them in the direction of certain products that we were commissioned to sell more. It was annoying to see, and I wished I could have done something about it, but I was as helpless as the others. Then help came in the most unimaginable way ever. That evening, before the end of my shift, the shift manager walked up to me and asked that I take over the shift allocation for the next couple of weeks because I was smarter and I would be able to pattern it in a way that would appeal to most people, if not everyone. But I think that was a ruse. I felt it was a way to turn over his work to the youngest member of staff. I was about to complain and reject the task, stating it was way above my pay grade, but I suddenly remembered Lily and decided to take on the task. The problem everyone was having with her was that she was messing with their work and not allowing them to get their commission quotas in at the right time. If I was in charge of the shift, I could finally do something about Lily's actions. So I started messing with Lily's shifts. I would schedule her for early mornings when she least expected it, or I would give her shifts that overlapped with other responsibilities she had outside of work. It was my way of throwing her off balance and making it harder for her to do her sneaky sales tricks. At some point, she was supposed to confirm her shift before logging off for the day. I knew she was going to, so I placed the wrong shift schedule on the board and changed it back immediately when she was gone, so no other person would check the wrong timing. But I didn't stop there. I also made sure to spread rumors about Lily's behavior, and at that point, they weren't really rumors. I subtly informed my manager that she had been lagging behind in her shifts, and people were starting to notice. Customers especially. The paying people were those they cared about, and it was true that they were getting an off vibe from Lily at that point in time. I guess just general frustration and lashing out. It got bad one of those days when the shift manager saw her call the customer the F word out loud for about 3 other customers to hear. He was beyond pissed off. As the days went by, Lily's behavior only seemed to get worse. She would show up late to her shifts or not show up at all, leaving the rest of us to pick up the pieces. It was like she didn't care about her job or the people she worked with. It was a drastic change. She just did not bother to match up the pace of the others or do the bare minimum, even when I didn't mess with her shift. Eventually, the management had enough. They called her in for a meeting and told her that her repeated absences and poor performance were unacceptable. They gave her a chance to shape up, but Lily didn't seem to take it seriously. She continued to flout the rules and ignore her responsibilities as if she were above reproach. But they didn't fire her still. Her undoing came when she missed 3 shifts in a row without so much as a word of explanation. One of those shifts was my doing, but the other 2 were purely hers. It was the last straw for management, who had no choice but to terminate her for job abandonment. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief knowing that Lily was finally out of our hair. Her departure was like a weight lifted off of our shoulders, freeing us from the chaos and drama she had brought into our workplace. We could finally breathe easy again, knowing that we could focus on our jobs without having to worry about Lily picking up her antics again. But as much as I wanted to revel in her downfall, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness for her. I knew that she had brought it upon herself, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that she was just a person who had lost her way. Maybe if things had been different, if she had been willing to change her ways, things could have turned out differently. After a couple of days, I think 2 weeks, I decided to get on with my life and find another job. That was the last I heard from Lily and all the other workers. I think OP obviously had a pretty big hand in helping getting Lily sacked, but I think really Lily was her own undoing here. She could have put in more effort or tried to fight it or tried to point out something clearly being manipulated or messed up on purpose, but they just kinda gave up. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. That said, our next story is, sister tells parents of my plans to sneak out, so I replace her contact lens with listerine strips. My teenage years living with my parents were really lonely. I, 16-year-old male, had siblings, 3 sisters, but that's it. My dad preferred to work 7 days a week than to spend any time with his family and my friends. Well, I was only allowed to visit friends once every week, and that was on Saturday. My mom preferred that I stayed at home to play with my sisters, but how could I fill my free time playing with girls? My older sister, let's call her Kathy, 18-year-old female, preferred to spend her time talking about jocks in the cheerleading squad, and that's when she wasn't talking about the new dress she just bought for some party she was sneaking out for. I had 2 other younger sisters who were still at the age where they preferred to play with their imaginary friends than to talk to real people. I was bored out of my mind for most of the time. The worst part was that I wasn't even allowed to have a TV up in my room. Ever since my mom found my collection of adult magazines, she decided that I couldn't be trusted to have a TV or a laptop. Even my phone was configured so they had access to my browser and search history. The only TV in the house was downstairs, and the downside to having multiple sisters was that the TV was always in use by one of them. If Kathy wasn't watching Love Island, Sam, 7-year-old female, or Helen, 9-year-old female, were watching some Barbie movie, I spent most of my time holed up in my room. The only time I actually had time to hang out with my friends was during school days. We hung out at lunch and on our way back from school. My sisters used to take the school bus, but my friends and I preferred to walk home. This dynamic wasn't good for my social life because I didn't spend a lot of time with people. I didn't have a girlfriend because I couldn't text girls without my mom knowing. My friends all had a group chat that we used to text after school, but I couldn't be in it because of my parents. When this got out of hand, I decided that I couldn't take it anymore. My friends and I made a plan to get me a new phone. I started saving my allowance with one of my friends, Josh, 17-year-old male. I didn't want to keep my money in my house because my mom is nosy and there's a high chance that she would find it. I didn't receive a lot of allowance, so it took some time to get the phone, almost 3 months. And even with that, my friends had to chip in. At least if I couldn't find a way to leave the house to hang out with them, I could text freely. Eventually, I got the phone. I always kept it on me. It was always on silent at home, and I always locked the door whenever I wanted to use it. I got away with it for months. But after a long time, I let down my guard. I was watching a sitcom in the living room since Kathy was in the kitchen, fixing herself a sandwich. The other girls were in their room. I received a text from my other friend, Jose. He had just sent me a funny video and I went to my room to reply to him. I had been holding the TV remote in the living room because I didn't want anyone snatching it up and changing the channel, and when I stood up, I unknowingly took it with me. Kathy came up to my room to get the remote and saw me with the phone. The video was so funny that I'd forgotten to lock the door, so she just walked in. Before I could explain where and how I got it, she went to my parents to report me. Don't think she did this because she was worried I stole the phone or something. It was done out of sheer jealousy. It was an iPhone 14. She'd been stuck using an 11 for the past few years, and no matter how many times she begged our parents to help her upgrade the phone, they wouldn't have it. I begged her not to tell on me, but she did it anyway. My mom seized the new phone and accused me of stealing her money to get it. I told her I'd been saving up my allowance to get it, but they wouldn't believe me. I got grounded for 2 weeks and my phone privileges got revoked. I guess my sister was hoping they would give her my iPhone 14, but they didn't. They just locked it somewhere in their room. I told my friends what happened in school the next day and they were pretty bummed out. We couldn't even save up for a new phone because the first one was darn expensive and I wasn't even getting allowance. It was a part of my punishment. Anyways, living at home only got worse. There was nothing fun to do. I had to turn to reading my mom's Harlequin romance books. That's how bad it got. Even my anime manga was all seized. I was living a nightmare. A few weeks after my punishment, things returned to normal. I got my Saturday and phone privileges back. Not the iPhone 14 though. I never saw that phone again. One day at school, I heard some of the cheerleaders talking about a party. It was supposed to be for the seniors who were going off to college and all the popular kids in school were going. Kathy was one of the popular kids and I wondered if she was going to the party. Of course, there was no way our parents would allow her, so I knew she wasn't going to ask. If she was going to go, she had no choice but to sneak out. I didn't want to ask her outrightly so she wouldn't be spooked. Instead, I asked Jose to help me keep an eye on her. By the end of the day, I knew her plan. Jose eavesdropped on her telling her friends how she pretended to be asleep, and when everyone had gone to bed, she would climb through her window and go to the party. So that day, after dinner, we both said goodnight to our parents and went to bed. I made sure to stay up till midnight, and sure enough, I heard her getting ready to leave the house. I watched through my window as she climbed down from hers. I even recorded it with my phone as she ran down the street. Then I went to her room to record her bed being empty. I made sure to put the timestamp too. My plan was to get my revenge on her for telling my parents about the phone. And trust me, the punishment for sneaking out will be way worse than all I've had to endure. I had to stay awake for hours to make sure my phone didn't go off and it kept recording everything. I had to switch clips too to make sure it saved successfully. Eventually, Kathy got home around 4 a.m. I recorded her running toward the house, and when she climbed up the window, you should see her face when she saw me recording her. The shock was priceless. She wanted to yell at me for coming into her room, and I had to remind her that she was going to wake our parents. I showed her the video I made and told her I was going to tell our parents. She begged me not to. I mean, she really begged, to the point where she shed tears. She said the house was too stifling and she just wanted to let loose for once. I could relate to what she was saying. Our parents' manner of parenting was crappy and we weren't enjoying our childhood. If I was invited to the party, I would have snuck out too. I didn't want to report her because of something I would have done myself. She even apologized about the phone incident. She told me she was jealous because she had always wanted an iPhone 14 in the same color I had. I decided to forgive her, since there might be a day I might need her help too. Breaking the cycle of revenge finally meant that I had an ally. Or at least that's what I thought. A month after this incident, I got invited to a party. There was this girl in my chem class that I've been trying and failing to ask out. But it turned out that she actually liked me too, so one day during lunch break, we hung out and she invited me to this party she was going to. I told her I'd be there. So that day, I snuck out of the house after bedtime and went to the party. There, the craziest thing happened. I met Kathy there. She was hanging out with some guy. I waved at her and she waved back. I thought we had an understanding, but around 4:30 a.m., I decided to head back home. I looked around for Kathy, but she wasn't there. I figured that she had gone home without me. When I got home, I climbed through the window, and to my absolute shock, my parents were in my room along with Kathy in her pajamas. She had gotten home early just so she could snitch on me. My parents seized my phone and grounded me for the rest of the year. I was going to be grounded all summer. I asked her why she did that, and she merely laughed. I thought I could reason with her, but it turned out that she was the devil incarnate, and she worshipped chaos. I've never felt so betrayed in my entire life. I had deleted the video I took of her a month ago as a sign of good faith, and now I had nothing to use as revenge against her. I couldn't also tell my parents that she was also at the party because she was obviously the one who reported to them. How was that possible? But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. She couldn't be trusted, so I decided to show her what happens to people who betray me. Kathy had an eye problem, so she had to use glasses when she was in middle school. But when she got to high school, she opted for contact lenses. So one day, I told my friends about my revenge plan. So Jose bought me listerine strips. When I got home, I cut them into round shapes like contact lenses. Then I got a contact lens case and placed them in. I made sure the case was dry because the strips melted instantly. All I had to do was wait for Kathy to fall asleep and swipe her real contact lenses. She had been wearing contacts for years, and so I was counting on the fact that she wouldn't notice the change. But I also made sure to do some pencil shading to make the strips look like real contact lenses. I even made it a little curved like an actual lens. The only issue was the dryness, but I was hoping my plan would work. I waited for the perfect day when she was fast asleep instead of binging Love Island like she did every night. I walked into the room and swiped the cases. The next day, while we were in our rooms prepping for school, I heard her scream from her room. An expected reaction to putting listerine strips in your eye. She didn't even get to do the second one. The first one melted in her eyes and she had to be rushed to the hospital. Her eyes were red for the entire week and it even got swollen due to some kind of allergic reaction. I swore that I wasn't responsible, but as expected, they didn't believe me. But I was already grounded for the rest of the year. Nothing much they could do to me anymore. Instead, I got lawn and garbage duty for a month. I didn't care about that, because I knew Kathy wasn't going to mess with me ever again. Respectfully, this might take the cake for one of the dumbest plans of revenge I've heard in quite some time. I got my sister to put listerine directly on their eyeball. I hope he's legitimately lucky that the story isn't titled, "I blinded my sister." That said, our next story is, I got the wrong summer job. I got a call one morning to interview as an assistant teacher during one summer holiday in college. The pay was good and the students looked friendly, so it was a win for me. I resumed the role, hoping to add to my skill set and experience. I remember an encounter I had with a woman on the day I interviewed for the role. She was polite and calm. I think a part of me felt at home with her, and I knew making her a friend wouldn't be a bad choice. Later, I learned that I would be working with her as an assistant. Well, you know what they say about first impressions and how they kind of shape your perceptions about people? That was the same way I felt. I had sincerely hoped that we would have a great relationship together. However, the first question she asked me made me realize that I wasn't going to be having as much fun as I expected. It happened in the middle of a random conversation I had with one student in the class. That student, who I later learned was B, walked up to me to ask if I was the new teacher they were expecting. I answered in the affirmative because I was convinced that I was the new teacher. B went ahead to make a snide remark and he went ahead to say, "I hope you'll like it here." It sounded weird and uncalled for. Why would he say that? I saw him walking away faster than I thought he would, even when I wanted to understand what he meant by such a statement. When I saw that I couldn't get him, I thought out loud, "I don't care if I like it here. I only have a little time after all," would make him stop. And just like that, the teacher, whom I'll refer to as superior, got my last statement. I don't know how to recount it, but I remember that she got over the roof in a way that confused me so much. I didn't understand why she was so hurt by what I said. She wasn't my employer, and everyone knew I came for a summer job. She hated when the management employed young college students who wouldn't stay long. She claimed that it didn't make her job easy, and it might affect the student. Well, I didn't quite agree with her point because I was an assistant teacher whose role didn't include direct involvement with the students regarding teaching. So she couldn't get the management to fire me like she had expected, and I guess she resolved to turn my intended swell time into a hell time. I decided to do a little background check on her. I wasn't shocked to hear that she liked to be in charge of everyone and every space. At least I saw the way she treated me. But I was shocked to hear that she was the principal's younger sister. Then it made so much sense why she felt she had a stake in everything that went on around the school. I knew then that I needed to be careful. I practically started walking on eggshells because I didn't want to instigate any act that could trigger Superior's anger towards me. You know, I was an international student who was trying to make good use of the summer period to earn some dollars to ease my parents' expenses. So, you see the reason why I needed to walk on eggshells. Besides, I didn't want to go job hunting again when I could just make good use of the one I had. But the more I tried to be careful, the more it seemed my carefulness was not enough. It was more like I was being tried regularly. One time, she got so intoxicated with power that she asked me to teach the students for a week. I didn't understand why she would instruct me to do that because it was not in my job description. But I listened. I listened because I didn't want her to be on my neck all through that week. I think not refusing her orders boosted her audacity in ways that I couldn't fathom. Right in front of the students, Superior decided to correct me. And not only did she do that, but she decided to embarrass me as well. I could tell that even the students were startled because everything she did was unnecessary. I had nothing to say, so I simply walked away. From then on, I kept to myself even more, and I tried to stay off her tracks as much as I could. But she seemed more determined than I was because, no matter how hard I tried, she kept coming for me. Then one day, I had a genuine reason to report late to work due to an emergency that could arise. I had no time to call the other people I was expected to call. Besides, she was the closest person in my space, and it was only natural for me to inform her about my plight before anybody else. However, when I got to work that morning, I was shocked to have been queried by the principal for coming late to work without proper permission. For some seconds, I looked lost and I couldn't seem to find my voice. When I managed to find my voice, I told the principal that I had an emergency to attend to that morning. And I indeed placed a call to my superior, urging her to leave a word for me since she was the closest person I could call at that moment. The principal was surprised to hear that I placed a call because my superior told him she hadn't seen nor heard from me that morning. When I left the principal's office, I was convinced that I was no longer going to lay low. In short, I made up my mind to not allow myself to be treated like a piece of trash because I was trying to stay humble. With one scornful look, I entered the class and went straight to my seat. I didn't say my usual courtesy greetings and she said none to me either, and I was glad she said nothing because I was so sure I was going to give a dead silence in return for anything she said. At that moment, it dawned on me that she was someone who was within my age bracket, and I had no reason to be scared, put off, or even timid. When that dawned on me, I made up my mind to make my stay in that place as pleasant as possible. At that point, it became clearer why the student who told me that he hoped I would like it here said what he said, and I also began to put all the stories I'd heard about my superior together. It made so much sense then. It became evident that she planned to oust me out the same way she had done others before me. I would call it strange that she didn't want anyone to work with her, whether she was a college student or not. I had tried to figure out if she was an insecure person or not, but I just couldn't picture her in that skin because of how outspoken she was. Then nothing else could explain why everyone was a problem to her. I was told that the last person who worked with her was a young graduate but wasn't as calm as I am. I wasn't surprised to hear that both of them were at loggerhead half of the time, and it was so difficult for them to maintain a healthy work environment. Eventually, after a lot of back and forth, the lady resigned. I guess she needed to keep her head together at that point. I think it was so disheartening to see that a toxic work environment was being created due to sentiments and oversight from the management. The thing was that the management would rather keep someone who was a relative than consider the trauma and pain inflicted on other employees. Then I realized the ball was in my court. I mean, it was me who was expected to decide whether I would complete the summer job or not, because as far as my superior was concerned, she was the prize and she wouldn't quit for someone like me. I saw the handwriting clearly on the wall, and I just quietly decided to round off my summer job and leave for good without looking back. But that intention was defeated when my superior decided to do her worst. I noticed how much she was trying to move funny around me ever since I chose to ignore her. A part of her keeps showing that she wants me out at all costs. If only she had shown that I wasn't the type of girl to be messed with, she would have been more discreet in her quest to get me out of their family establishment. The morning she did her worst, everything seemed normal as usual. I mean, she was on her side of the class and I was on my side. The students had just stepped out to observe their recess, but before that time, she had asked me to get their notes for assessment and grading, which I did. She had also given me a painting that was meant to be mounted on the wall on my side of the room. Due to the volume of work I had on my desk, I decided to hang the paint as soon as I was done with the grading and assessment. Then, suddenly, she walked up to my desk with so much vigor. I didn't attribute much to the energy, so I concentrated on my work. Suddenly, I felt a pull on my hair. Before I could ascertain what was happening, my superior had thrown a few punches in my face. I struggled to break free, but I guess the more I struggled, the more determined she got. Everything happened so fast, but it was fast enough to send me to the hospital. I was told that I passed out in that heat. I woke up in pain and regret. I wondered why I decided to stay amid toxicity, all because I wanted to make money. Then I shook that feeling off because it wasn't my fault that I got employed and chose to work. By then, my friends had gotten involved, and they decided to report the matter to the Dean of Student Affairs because the law had to take its course. Then I was told that my superior and the school principal had been trying so hard to sweep the matter under the rug. After employing different tactics, they resorted to begging and pleading with me. My superior didn't mean to hit me the way she did, she was just overwhelmed. I didn't know what irritated me the most, that the principal was bent on destroying his school because he was trying to protect a family member, or that he didn't care whether other people got destroyed or not. How could he be so blind and gullible at the same time? Well, I was determined to make myself the last victim of such a toxic work environment. After consulting with the Dean of Student Affairs, we decided to involve the police. I was much stronger and I could speak for myself. I hated that other teachers in that school had watched evil and injustice prevail for such a long time because they would rather keep their jobs. I recounted to the police all the injustice and atrocities that had gone on in that school. Thankfully, they listened as they should. My superior didn't just face the full wrath of the law, the principal was also questioned. The principal was also invited for questioning. Honestly, I feel like this is such a messy thing that honestly would balloon out to be way bigger than OP's even describing. I mean, that is, if people who previously worked there who may have experienced similar-ish things would be willing to speak up and join in this case. Honestly, I bet a number of people who had summer jobs before and dealt with this kind of stuff, they would probably just want to leave that whole thing in the past and not waste any of their time. Or maybe they would love a chance at revenge. Who knows? But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.